Hey, Riddle here. Welcome to my channel, welcome to this video, or welcome back if you're a subscriber. I appreciate it. So, first of all, I want to say there's no right or wrongs when creating art, of course, and it's always good to break the rules. I have my own idea of what art is and what art should be and what I collect. And also, I'm very critical of my fellow artists and myself because I'm just been in the art world for so long and been collecting so long. I've been making art for so long. There's certain things that just seem so obvious to me that, and I'm always trying to push my fellow creators to recognize their value. And also, if you're going to make the sacrifice in life to be an artist, and you know what I mean by the sacrifice, it's really important that we take ourselves seriously and that we don't forget ourselves in the process. More than ever, we live in a time of external validation that often really holds no real value. You know, we're constantly being pressured to put more and more and more material out there to social media to try to keep the world's attention. But often I just feel like it's really diminishing the quality and the authenticity of what we're creating. We're kind of like, people have become like seals. Artists have become like seals, just trying to get a fish, you know what I mean? Arf, arf, arf. And a lot of times when artists like show their process, like how they paint, they do the entire thing, they're making these videos, I just don't see the necessity of it. Especially, you know, it's like, I don't want to perform for people. I'm a professional. And so that's just my opinion. But what I want to share with you is the idea of don't forget yourself in your work. You know, I love the work of so many artists that work in fantasy, and they make beautiful things. But if you look at the works that make their way into the museums and make their way historically into mankind's, peoplekind's evolution of history, they aren't artists that are always doing this, like trying to be so fantastic and always trying to entertain people and always living in this fantasy. Look at Van Gogh. What Van Gogh did is he humbly recorded his life. And even though he was like in a one bedroom shamble, barely getting by, he painted that. And now these works of arts, and you know, when he was painting the people who worked the fields and the peasants, the art collectors at the time, the art critics were horrified by this. And he did it anyways. And his honesty and to his, you know, his dedication to self is magnificent. So my question to you, are you including yourself in your work? Are you recording the time that you're living in honestly? Are you recording your personal life? And no, you don't have to put this stuff in an exhibition. You don't have to sell it, but it's important that you record it, because if you're doing the work, it shows authenticity and it shows a core. Often when I go to an artist to collect work, I'm like, that's pretty and that's nice, and I understand all this stuff. You're trying to make a buck, but what are you hiding in your studio? Like, what's the stuff that you are afraid to show people or you can't show people? That's what I want to collect, being an artist. So I'm going to show you a little bit of including yourself in your work. Another thing that is valuable about keeping a sketch, an art diary, and always, you know, never throw anything away. I have been sketching since, you know, I don't want to sound like a cliche, but I was a sick kid. So I could only do, you know, I was trapped in a bed in a hospital in an oxygen tank. So a crayon was put in my hand at a very young age, and that's all I could do was draw. So I have sketches going back to these times that I was this incredible, emotional being, and I'll never be that person again. And I can't, you can't recall the depths and the intensity of being 19 years old. But if you sketched it out or painted it out and just for yourself, you will find when you are in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you can draw from that during times that you're having problems connecting emotionally. And I just published my first book, and that book is an illustrated love journal. And some of the topics in that book, I actually went back to the sketches that I did in the early 1980s and used those sketches in the book presently. And nobody knows that. Nobody knows the difference. So hold on to everything. Don't throw anything away. Like, really take care of and honor and secure all those old drawings, no matter how simple they are, and draw your emotions. Draw your emotions. Now, I wish I could turn the camera sideways, but I already started the video this direction, so I'm sorry, and I'm in a very shallow space, so I can't back up any further. This is a painting I did for myself. And again, everything in life is not, emotions don't have shape. And for me as an artist, that is the biggest challenge I have. And when I did the book, the My Loves and Crushes Journal, which you can find on Amazon, I had several different goals. One was to make something that was non-gendered and non-sexed, and also non-raced. And so giving shape to the shapeless, giving shape to emotions is something that I've always strived for as an artist. And in this part of my life, as you can tell, it was an incredibly dynamic part of my life, but I was in a relationship with someone who was dying. And that's what this expresses, was the mania and all of the beauty and all of the chaos and all of the confusion that came along with being in a relationship with someone who was severely mentally ill and physically dying. And so this is one example of how I painted my life. I painted my life. I'm going to take you down and around now. Have you ever heard of an artist? Most people haven't. She just recently passed away. Her name was Betty Dobson. Betty Dobson was the mother. She was the mother of like feminism, teaching women about their own sexuality and sex organs and blah, 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 blah. Well, this is an actual print, sorry for the light in the background, from Betty Dobson, who at this period of her life was heterosexual, and she actually did all of these amazing prints of she and her lover, and these were actually done in her college days. And I was just really lucky that I was able to obtain a handful of these beautiful erotic prints. And again, sorry if you're puritanical and watching this, but educate yourselves. There's a big difference between pornography and erotica, and I'm not going to take the time to try to educate people around that because it's just exhausting. What else can I show you? So this was a period of my life that I was really struggling financially. I was living in a megalopolis and trying to work a job and be an artist. And one day I just took all my bills and I laid them out on the floor and spelled the word slave as the light was coming in on this beige colored carpet, and took a photograph of it with a really old, like 2.5 digital camera. And what's crazy is when people see this, what they see is a back. They see like a human form, but in the moment, that wasn't my focus. My focus was just to record the phenomenon of the monetary system that we live in, and what the majority of the world, this state of sanctioned capitalistic slavery that most people live in. Okay, Let's go on to something else. Oh, here's another Betty Dobson. And she goes in, if you look into her literature, it tells who this man was and her age and blah, 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 blah. It was very, very cool, very interesting. What else can we show you? The times that we're living in. I mean, we all interpret these differently. With this painting, which I may have shown you before, the original of this painting was collected by someone in Paris, and I had it reprinted on acrylic, which made it really juicy. And my whole idea with this, my process is kind of like the ancient people, the Egyptians, where I try to use very familiar and very basic and very relevant icons to express emotions and a story. So this is just recording how I see people surviving and thriving right now throughout within the reality of what's happening with the planet and the economy and everything changing. So we have the car thing, which can also tie into overpopulation or over-industrialization, the dependency or the medication to dull our actual feelings and emotions. The feeling that majority of people, their freedom and their true heart is being held captive. Here's the ideal that everyone wants, the happy home. But the fact is the serpent looms right behind the ideal of what the happy home is. This is your male and female doing what they do, creating the next generation and procreating, but the burden on their shoulders of climate change, bringing a child into this world while the world is starting to disintegrate in many ways, burn up. So, and this is like the things we distract ourselves with. I've got turkeys and holidays, and really it's just to show the confusion and the maybe the deception of the modern world and what we refer to as progress. Okay, moving on. So this artist, when they did this painting, this was the red-headed stepchild of the exhibition. And this is not a photograph, this is an actual painting, done very well. And nobody wanted it, of course, because it's kind of like the Scream, the painting The Scream. But this was this artist's interpretation of toxic masculinity. In other words, no matter how beautiful and feminine a woman would like to be, she's always, presently, going to be forced to take power as a man does, because that's what women are allowed. So after he made this beautiful depiction of a woman, he put a mustache on her. And then this is, of course, the snake is the symbol of the phallic or the male, and it is killing or devouring the feminine, which is the butterfly. So this is it's an abstract way that an artist has caught something that's happening in our modern time. I'm gonna go upstairs now. We've covered some of this. What do we have up here that I can show you? This is kind of interesting. I think artists also, when they're not trying to just make money and they're not being completely insecure, have very deep perspectives on the future. Just like how people point out with many artists, how they saw technology way before it became, came into being in our lifetime. Like with Rembrandt. This is a sketch I did back in 2005 called New Nature. And the idea behind these designs, the idea behind this piece of art was that no, man is not going to take responsibility and save the pollinators and save nature. What they're going to do is they're going to monetize it. They're going to allow all of those creatures to die, so then they can create robotic versions or clones to replace them, which would also make us more dependent on whomever owned that or whoever controlled that. And the scary thing is, I don't know if you keep up with science, but it's happening. They actually are working on drones now to supplement or replace the bees and. So this is just, again, an example of, I wasn't trying to make a buck. I was just recording a concern or a vision or an idea that I had about the time I was living in. There's another Betty Dobson. So this artist, when he made this was Ed Martin's work. And this was really crazy because Ed would do these phenomenal things. And his wife, who's very old Hollywood, but she was in management, very, very astute businesswoman. And Ed was actually a cameraman. He was one of the head cameraman that was helped with the movie Mad Max. Ed has passed away already, but he would do these incredible twisted, very graphic sculptures, and then he would photograph them. And his wife would never allow him to show these. Like, he never took these to the gallery. He would do these flowers and these pretty things, and that's the thing that he showed the public. But behind the scenes, he was working on this body of work. And the body of work is so relevant. I don't know if you can see it. There's a graveyard. And then he manipulated this doll to create this image. And basically that's supposed to be a sarcophagus. And look at that. He actually signed it for me. This was his interpretation of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, but from the perspective of heterosexual drug users. Thus the needle, the razor blade, champagne bottle top. This was just his emotions around that. And I mean, how magnificent, really, if you can stomach it. And I just can, this is the stuff that I find relevant. This is the kind of stuff I like to collect, because this was a virus that wiped out millions and millions of people during the time that I was living on this planet. So for me, this is a really relevant subject, and one that I had to have for my collection. Dippity-doopity-doo. So you get my idea about relevance. Don't always be making fantasy. I mean, you can do what the hell you want to, but if you really, when you leave this planet, you want to leave something of value, you want to be careful with how much fantasy you do. And if you're doing fantasy, this is what I tell artists all the time. If you're going to do flowers and you're going to do insects and you're going to do that stuff and stay within the safe range, you can still do that, and you can do it smartly and relevantly. If you're going to use flowers, why not do the work and find out the flowers that are in danger or extinct, and the insects and the birds, and use butterflies and use those in your work, so you're not only doing the work that you want to do, staying true to yourself, but you're creating this relevant historical document. That's the stuff that's going to wind up in a museum. That's the stuff that the smart people with cash are going to go, oh yeah, I need to have a piece of that. This piece is, again, a piece I did recording the obesity phenomenon. You know, we live in a time that more people will die before their life expectancy, and not because they're starving, but because they have too much food or the wrong kind of food. And I'm not judging anything around this. I just know, you know, it just is what it is. And I wanted to record it, but in a very stylized way. And so this was based on that famous X-ray that they did of an obese person. And, you know, inside all of those massive layers of fat was this normal size skeleton. And of course, like a very loving, normal human being, but just trapped in this massive meat shell. And so this is a way that I expressed it in a way that was joyful and loving and kind of also transparent. I guess I don't want to be overly didactic, but when I shared this, again, I had this is a digital drawing I did, and I had it printed on Lucite. It came out so juicy, like really nice details and stuff. But when I shared this with the general public, it had a very positive response, really, really positive response. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that today. I'm not going to go into everything and the sketch pads and just telling you, like, take yourself seriously and don't erase yourself from your history. Because basically, if you're just making pretty and you're just making fantasy and you're just making things for, you know, to please other people, it's never going to really have, it's not going to, not only is it not going to really have any value ever, you're disrespecting yourself as an artist. You're taking yourself out of your own, you're invalidating your own life. And it's really important. It's more important than anything as artists that we learn to self-validate, because if you don't learn to self-validate, in a society that so often disrespects and disregards creative people and art in general, unless it's making an obscene amount of money, you're not going to make it. You just aren't going to survive the rigors of being a creative, because it's very isolating and it's very tough. It's tough. Why these? Because this is what people do. They have their nipples pierced. Again, some people see this as sexual. I see it as relevant. This is a thing. This is the thing that people did when I was alive. This is the thing people do. And it's part of my erotic art collection. Okay. Just joyful dancing Hasidics. Relevant. Culturally relevant. All right. If you have any questions, comments, I hope this all made sense. Please leave them in the box. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other, because I believe how we treat each other on the streets is our ultimate reality. Bye for now.